Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video, I have collected questions that have popped up throughout my years here on YouTube about guitar pedals, and I've put them together and created questions that feel like the most common questions I get. Today we're going to go through 6, but if you have more questions, then maybe I'll do another one later on.
When turning a toy into a guitar pedal, what do I have to think about when it comes to power?
Well, the first thing you have to think about is whatever toy you have. What sort of batteries does it use? Because that's usually the way it works. You have a toy that has batteries, that means that it's using DC power. If you have a toy that is using some other kind of power, check on the back of it and see what it says. If it says AC, I would recommend turning something else into a pedal, because you're gonna have to put in a transformer and things like that to change it into DC, and that might be too much work for something little like a toy. But most toys come with battery, and if it's a toy that takes a 9-volt battery, then you don't need to do anything, because pedals use 9 volts and you just need to attach a new jack. If it uses something less, like a 5-volt or something like that, then you need to put in some sort of resistor to change the value and stop the amount of electricity that is flowing. If it is something else, like for example a 12-volt, then you need to use a 12-dot power adapter instead, and it will just be a 12-volt toy. If it uses 18, then you might have to either test it with 12-volt and see if it still works, because some things they can take less power and still work fine. Or you might have to put in some sort of buffing circuit that lets the signal become bigger. There are some kits you can buy that helps you with that, but usually you will never find toys for kids that use more than 9 volt, so I wouldn't worry about it. But the problem can be if it's less. So most times you will just need to put in the right connector so you can put in your power adapter that you usually use for your pedals, because it's 9 volt and 9 volt works with 9 volts. Or you will have to put in a resistor to get that 9 volt down to something less. For example, if it's maybe 6 volt or 4 volts or something like that.
When it comes to turning a toy into a pedal, what do I have to think about when it comes to volume?
Well, really, there's only one thing you really have to think about, and that is that you A/B the pedal when it's on and when it's switched off, and that you make sure that you don't have a crazy amount of volume difference. If you, for example, build a pedal that will just blow your speaker because you're just putting so much into it, that's not something you have to be scared of when it comes to toys, because most of the time they're not that strong. But there are some of them that will make, a lot more volume. Not to a point where you have to be scared of it damaging your amp, but where you will feel like, oh, I can't use this because the volume that this pedal has when I press it is such a big jump. Then you will have to put in resistors. You could put in a volume resistor, which is a potentiometer, or you could put in a small inside potentiometer or resistor to just lower the volume of the pedal inside. I usually A/B the circuit. If I notice that, oh, this is too loud, and the range of the volume control, if you have a volume control, it's not helping me because there's just not enough to find a place where it can match or sort of work in the same area. I like to think about it this way, which is going to be hard to explain, but you have a baseline for where your signal is clean, basically a guitar going directly into the amp, and you want to be able to use your pedal to move a little bit around that area. You never want to go crazy in volume, and you never want to go like crazy in low volume. You want to be able to maybe make the pedal go silent, maybe, but you don't want to, it completely peak out. And so you will have to fiddle around inside and find something, and just try different resistors and see where you want to put the resistor, if you want to put it on the signal into the pedal or the signal out of a pedal. Basically, if you want it on the side where the guitar comes in, or on the side where the signal leaves the pedal and goes to the amp. There can be a difference there, but usually it's more of a preference thing, I would say. So don't focus too much on it. It's going to be hard enough to try and get the volume down. I suggest putting in a potentiometer, and then when you finalize it, you measure the potentiometer to see what voltage you ended up on. If you put in a 5K, let's say, and you move it around a bit and you find your perfect volume where you feel like, oh yeah, now the volume on the actual pedal starts making sense to me and being usable. Then you measure that potentiometer, or you can just, tape it together and leave it inside the pedal. But a better thing to do, if we're going to do this correctly, is to measure it and see that, it's a 3.5K. And then you just switch out the 5K resistor for a potentiometer for a resistor that is the correct value and just have it there instead. I hope that makes sense. That's at least the way I do it, and it helps me stop guessworking.
What type of snipper do you use?
I use these snippers, and as hopefully you can see, they are very small and they're flat on one side, so I can come in and I can cut off legs. And on these they have a max cut, and it's 2 mil, so this is not for big weird things. I don't use this for anything else than my electronic guitar and pedal building. And the brand name is Pergiacomi. Never heard of. But they look like this. They're small, flat wire cutters, and there are different sizes and there are different versions you can get. You might find wire cutters that look like this, but as you can see, the heads are pretty different, and these are for more big and bulky things, like for redoing the wiring in your house, or a lamp or something, thicker things, bigger stuff, while this is for the tiny stuff. And the same thing goes with this. You can see it's even bigger again, and it's just a question of what kind of thickness and that sort of things.
If I have 2 pedals in one, do they both need power?
Yes, if you have 2 pedals in one enclosure, they both need power. They're both separate circuits, and even if you put them together, one pedal goes into the other, or they're both in series or parallel or something like that, and you're having one switch to go from true bypass to go into the both of the pedals. And even if you have just one in jack and one out jack, you still need to have power to both. So if you have just one 9-volt DC in for the power, you still need to connect them to both of the pedal circuits. Now you also have to think about things like the ground wires and make sure that everything is grounded. Just because you grounded one of the pedal PCBs doesn't mean that you haven't grounded the other one. So make sure you've grounded both of them, because you get instructions on how to make them work, and even if you're putting 2 together, you still have to follow all the instructions. So if you have a ground that needs to go to the jack, or a ground that needs to go to the DC jack or to the switch, you need to do double connections and have 2 ground wires at every place, basically. One for each of the pedals that you're putting into one enclosure.
What resistor value do I need for my LED?
Well, it depends on what sort of LED you have, but most commonly the LEDs that you see in guitar pedals have a 2.2K resistor. Now, you can experiment with raising that value if you want to. If you, for example, already have a pedal that you've bought and you think that the LED is too bright and it's annoying and you want to dim it, you can actually change out that resistor in the pedal for something a little bit higher. So for example, if you have a, let's say, 2.2K resistor in a pedal and you don't like the brightness and you want to dim it a little bit, you can try putting in something like a 3.3K resistor and see if that dims it up just enough for you. Where the tricky thing comes is when you put in too little. If you put in something like a 1K resistor or something like that, you might risk burning the LED. The LED is usually resistant to somewhere around 3 or 3.5 volt, and the pedal is a 9 volt, so you need to find a nice balance in between. I would say With most LEDs, unless you're putting in something weird that you know has a higher value, there are, for example, LEDs that are 9-volt LEDs. They're usually used in things like flashlights and like car alarms and things like that when you want a really bright light. I've never seen anyone put that into a pedal. You could definitely do that if you want to. Do it and let me know in the comments below if it works out for you. No, but seriously, unless you're putting in something weird, I would say 2.2K resistor for the LED, and then experiment with raising it, but don't really go below that unless you're using something special. There are LEDs that are strange.
How important is it that I use the same potentiometer as you?
Well, it sort of depends. When you see me build a kit, I usually use the parts that come in a kit, and I usually stick to those things. Changing things around doesn't necessarily have to be that big of a thing, but when it comes to, for example, some of the pedals that I've just put together with things like toys, or this question comes from my $1 fuss video, then it's not as important actually, and I usually use something that is in the ballpark of what I'm replacing and that is sort of the same thing. Yeah, I'm usually using something that I already have laying around, and I'm trying to find something that sort of works. I usually don't put that much energy into it, since it's just, you know, a fun thing that I do and I just need it to work. I'm not selling any pedals or building them for any like professional musician who is going on tour. If I did, I would probably put a lot more energy into making sure things were perfect. If you're just looking for getting within 90% of things like linear or reverse or log or all those kinds of different pots, linear and log, never mind. My point is, yeah, it doesn't really matter that much actually. I know that there's probably someone out there who's saying, yeah, it does. But if you just want things to work and you just want to see if things will do what they're supposed to do, then I would say it's more important that you make sure you connect things correctly, and then you can experiment. And if you feel like, oh no, I really need to try and find another thing that works better, try something else. A thing that I've noticed a lot of the times is when I have something that needs, for example, let's say a 10K potentiometer, and I'm putting in like 100K potentiometer or something like that, that usually the pot only works the first, let's say, 1/3 of the turn, and then it doesn't really do anything else. And so that could potentially give you the feeling that you're building something that isn't working as it should, and then it could be important for you to switch it out for another one and trying to find something correctly. But when it comes to just putting something together super DIY, you don't necessarily have to follow along 100% what I'm doing. Sometimes I do tell you that I measure things, like for example when I build that $1 fuss pedal and when I built the Killer Fuzz pedal, I measured where the little trim pots were and I replaced them with something that I felt was as close as possible. And that's something that I think is important to do and that I think you can do. So try that, to have that approach, to just be like, well, it's close enough. I'm not 100% there, but it's close enough. I'm not going crazy out of it. I'm not putting in a 1 meg where I'm supposed to have a 1K or something like that. But yeah, I've already made a video about potentiometers, and in that video we talk about how the curve of the turning looks. And I would say that's one of those things where you don't necessarily need to follow what I'm doing. If you feel like, oh no, he's throwing in a pot and I don't have that pot at home, which means I can't do this evening as I wanted to. I will have to wait to the weekend in order to get this done because I have to go buy things or order them or something. Like, no, just throw things together and see what happens. Maybe you will feel after you've done everything that I need to change out the pot for a different value or a different kind. Then you can do it. But then you've done, 99% of the work and you've experimented and tested it, and yeah. Anyway, I hope that helped. Let me know in the comments below if this sort of video was interesting. I did it because I felt like it was a while since I last did a video about pedals and things like that, and it's been a lot of guitar lately, which I feel is okay, obviously, because it's mainly a guitar channel, but I want the pedal part to be moving along as well. So yeah, if you like the video, let me know. If you have questions, do you think I should do another one of these videos, let me know. I chose to do 6 because I felt like that would be a nice even number. We could definitely do fewer or more in the future. But anyway, that's the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new here, please press the like and subscribe and all of those weird things that you're supposed to press to make me feel validated. Anyway, yes. Until next time, stay awesome and cool, and go and experiment with putting different sort of resistors and capacitors and all the other things that goes into a pedal in weird orders, and then plug your guitar through it into your amp and just see what happens. Some parts will probably break, but that's okay. They are cheap little things and you can always get more.